Hello, best ever listeners, and welcome to the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever show. I'm Theo Hicks, and today I'll be speaking with Kevin Harris. Kevin, how are you doing today?
Good, Theo. How are you doing?
I am well. Thanks for asking. Thanks for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We're going to talk about Kevin's InvestNext apartment syndication, real estate syndication software platform. So he's a CEO and co-founder of InvestNext, a software that modernizes the way real estate syndicators raise money and manage capital. He has 5 years of real estate experience, and the platform has hosted over 230 syndications worth over $1 billion. He is based in Detroit, Michigan, and you can say hi to him at investnext.com. So before we get into what InvestNext is, do you mind telling us some more about your background and then what you're focused on today?
Sure thing. So I got started previous to InvestNext. Give context on InvestNext. As you mentioned, real estate investment platform geared towards your private network of investors, manager investors on that platform. But ahead of InvestNext, what really, ahead of this, I was kind of going through the corporate track. Worked at a consulting firm. We implemented CRMs, ERPs, accounting systems, and so forth. So got exposed to a lot of different enterprise kind of level clients, as well as even real estate clients ahead of that. So that was kind of my systems background. Ahead of that, really one of the most formative parts of my life was actually my time at Handshake. And Handshake, for context, is basically what you might call the LinkedIn for college students. So it's a career network. I was involved there when it was just a dorm room funded startup, and today they're like over a $500 million company. I was employee number 2. Working with the co-founders, building out the product. Going to university career centers, getting shot down, going back, building more. The rest is history. And that being my 3rd year of college was pretty formative in what I'm doing today. And I knew at that point that I really wanted to be involved in the tech space, wanted to build something meaningful that solved a systemic problem. And, fast forward to about a few years back when I met my co-founder, Michael Giese. He was working on this interesting side project, working for a real estate investment firm that was really just trying to streamline the way they interacted with their investors, the way they reported and communicated to them. And it was a tool that was meant to be a one-off tool for that firm. But we got people knocking on the door saying, "Hey, would you mind deploying something like this for our group?" And we'd been talking about it for a while, and that was kind of the aha moment, and pretty much kind of the founding moment of InvestNext. We realized at that point that there's a massive gap in this space, how people go out and they syndicate and manage their capital partners and investors. So from that point onward, it's the rest is kind of history.
Sure. And then was InvestNext, was that 5 years ago when it started?
We proof of concept product, that would be 5 years ago. We were really just getting into the space. Exactly.
Okay. Are you like the coder, the one who's like up for,
So I'm one of the product teams. I stay away from the code. I do the design portion of it. I let Michael and his team work through that stuff, but I'm heavily involved in this side of the workflows in the product. So.
And so he kind of had this idea of, not really an idea. He was essentially working for an existing company, created something for them, and then other people were asking for the same thing. So it's like, well, so that's kind of like that's where you identify the need. Exactly.
It was pretty serendipitous from that standpoint.
How'd you meet the co-founder? Like how did you meet your co-founder?
Yeah, so I think back to how this all came together, and really it was at my last company where I worked at. It was an indirect connection. It was somebody, one of my customers who said, "Hey, this person, my good friend's working on this, this side project. maybe you guys might, be able to connect or kind of, interact on this. And so there was really no presumption on what we'd be working together, especially what we'd be building. He just happened to know that I had experience with Handshake. I'd been in the startup world, and perhaps I could lend some advice. So, it's indirect connection, and then we really just hit it off from that point.
Nice. Yeah, I always like hearing about the kind of how partners met each other, because it's traditionally pretty random.
It really is. I mean, and again, just something that I just always think back to is just the serendipity of it all. You really just never know the doors that you can kind of keep open, and you never know who you meet. And so, absolutely.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about InvestNext now. So, I have experience with syndications, and so in my mind, it's broken down when it comes to investors. It's really finding the investors, and then it's getting the money from the investors, or raising money for a particular deal or for a fund, and then the investor relations part. And so obviously your business focuses kind of, from what I'm understanding, on helping with the actual process of raising the money for a particular deal or a particular fund. And then once that deal is closed on, helping with the investor relations portion. So let's start with the raising money part first, and then we'll talk about the investor relations second. So how does InvestNext help the syndicator raise money? And obviously not, maybe that you do help them find more money, but help them, I guess, manage that process.
Yeah. So the concept around this is that whether you're a first-time syndicator or you've already done this many times, our intent with the platform is you have a single workspace to manage the very beginning life cycle of that syndication to start with. So, that's everything from, you have a CRM, of course, to manage prospective investors, capital partners, just people that you are interacting with. That ties in directly into what we call an online deal room. So, when you're ready to go live with your offering or your deal, it's really kind of housing that digital tear sheet, that presentation that you can send out to your groups. They can view that full offering, and then, of course, commit online, run the entire transaction, subscription docs and everything through the actual deal room. And so that's kind of the big major component to begin with. It's just streamline that entire initial transaction with the investor, and of course, saving you time at the end of it all.
So you have the CRM that I have to kind of track all my investors that I have, and then would that also be like, okay, so here's ones that are potential, and then here's ones that have invested, and here's how much they've invested, and here's the deals that they're in, and then okay, yes.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that, it's really being able to manage your entire pipeline of prospective capital. And again, it's from the very onset. We work with groups that, again, they're doing their first deal, and you know what, they know that, okay, perhaps we may not land on something for the next few months, but at the very least, they want to start building up that pipeline, building those relationships. So they're just tracking those relationships in the CRM, tracking their pipeline. And then, of course, when the deal hits, they put together all their collateral, all of their documents in the deal room. And of course, when they're ready to actually present that, it's as easy as sharing that. So
sure. Exactly. And so in this, you said it was the online deal room. So I have a deal. What about kind of so are there ways to, because I mean a big thing is obviously keeping your investors up to date on where you're at, right? When are funds due? When do you need to submit the documents? Getting those documents to them, kind of getting that information to them. And so, is there some sort of like email service you connect to that I can say, okay, I want to send an email every week to remind them about funding? People who have funded will get one email. People who haven't funded will get another email. Is it capable of doing all that stuff too?
Exactly. That's exactly it. So when you go live with a deal, first of all, the first and foremost, what we want to present to the investor is, call it kind of that single source of truth. So the investor they can go back to the deal room and say, hey, what's the status of anything that's happening? within that deal room, you can see all of the updates of what's been going on. So that's kind of, call it the inbound approach. The investor knows, instead of digging through their email chain and kind of looking for what was the last update, it's all in one place. Second part to that is, there's the intelligence built behind this, so that when the sponsor goes out, they market the deal, they have all their commitments in, it knows exactly who's can transact to the capital, transact to the funds, and of course who's left in the previous sequence to that. So then from there, there's intelligent reminders to follow up with those investors. So that's a very common scenario that we see, especially when you go out and capital raise. So
as an investor, how am I getting access to this?
So multiple ways. So we work, different groups have different kind of approaches to how they're going to interact with their investors. Some groups are very, call it by invitation only. So of course this can live behind a security layer that you can only get granted access to the deal room, and of course once you've been verified, you can go in and view the deal. Other groups, call it maybe like maybe a 506 kind of open format fundraise. You can literally open it up to the internet as a whole. So varying groups do varying kind of open access to the deal room.
So it would be like would I need to share a link with my investors, or would I input their email into InvestNext, and then they'd get like the here's how you set up your account email from InvestNext?
So you could both ways. So you basically imagine if you had a mass communication out to a group of investors, you could actually grab that shareable link. You can say, hey, everyone, you can feel free to access the deal room right at this link. And of course, when they jump in, they can view all the details there. On the other side of that, again, you could actually, that link is really whatever you want to do with that. You can put it on, host it on your website. You can send it out. And of course, you can, again, back to that invitation, by invitation only, you can select a certain group of investors and directly send them an invitation to that deal room. So.
Perfect. Okay. So I think we hit on that front part pretty well. And so deals closed, investors get the email that the deal's closed. And then now let's talk about the investor relations aspect. And so how does InvestNext help me manage my kind of communication and getting the proper information to my investors about the deal?
Yeah. So that ties in directly into what we call kind of the investment part of the product. And that's really everything from managing, first of all, it's all connected. So once you've actually received those contributions, those investments, that's now being tracked on the cap table. You can now set up your waterfall structure around this. So it's a full drag and drop builder, exactly as you would, as you see it in your operating agreement. You model it right in the system, and then moving forward, when you're running your distributions, whether that's monthly, quarterly, scheduled, that's being all run through the system. Investors are getting paid out. And then on the flip side of that, on the investor relations side, is of course investors gain access to their portal. They can view their full portfolio with you, distributions to date, return metrics, etc. So that's where we now carry into the investor relations part.
What about reporting? And so do I upload my own reports? Am I inputting individual kind of like line items for data? How does that work?
So reporting, one of two ways that it can be done. So individual investor reporting, since InvestNext houses the entire investor transaction data. So again, contribution amounts, distributions, we are now the calculation engine for a lot of the investor kind of performance metrics. So whether you want to set up, maybe you're sending out a quarterly batch of statements out to your investors, you can generate those in the systems. Those can get placed outbound to the investors, or the investors can log in at any point as they would with their Charles Schwab account, investment account. They can view those in live. And then the other side of that is, if you have any sort of property level reporting or any sort of asset level reporting, we're working through integrations with systems, right? So if you have an asset level, whether call it your standard property management software, we can actually connect right into that and marry that data into your reporting. So that's That's especially useful for groups that, again, maybe at scale, you're working with multiple property managers, and each one of those may utilize a separate system. So what we need to be able to do is connect the data from each one of those systems and then aggregate those up, both for internal reporting as well as external reporting for investors.
They're saying that the InvestNext can connect to, ABC property management companies software so that you'll have kind of like instantaneous access to the reports for my properties, like rent rolls and profit and loss statements and things like that.
That's exactly it. So that we facilitated many of those integrations in the past, and that's really the vision around all this stuff. Is again, we aggregate the very asset level data, and again, not only for the sponsor but for the investor that's now presenting an added layer of transparency. Exactly.
And then the last question. So what about so not sending distributions, not sending the reports, but sending like monthly or quarterly like update emails with specifics on current occupancy rates and renovation updates, things like that. So what I need to do that kind of somewhere else and like manually type in, my explanations of what's going on, or is there some sort of automation for that as well?
Yeah, so we have this, maybe I get a little to the nuts and bolts or techie about this, but we have this concept known as merge variables. And so the idea here is that when you're drafting up a new communication or even in our system what we call a post, you can actually carry in as part of your kind of your natural language, right? As you're typing out your summary or so forth, you can actually include sort of metrics that you can embed into that paragraph line. So you could do that. You could literally pull metrics in from the system that are already being automatically calculated. And of course, you can set that as your template from moving forward when you're doing your just monthly or quarterly cadence reporting. And again, two different formats. I just mentioned, one way is, okay, I'm going to send out a mass communication or mass email out to my industrial park investors. Of course, the system already knows who your industrial park investors are. It knows it's their actual reporting metrics. But then the other side of that is we have this concept of posts. And when you do that, you basically can post an update to call it the investor portal. Investor logs in, or they can receive that on their phone. They can view it kind of in a rich format text as you would like an online blog. So it's kind of the historical concept where maybe you sent out a mass email, you attached a PDF, an Excel, just kind of saying, hey, this is what's going on. It's a bit more of a richer format where you can even embed YouTube videos or whatnot. So
like pictures and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
This is very neat. All right, Kevin, what is your best real estate investing advice ever, or just best advice ever for running a business?
I always say focus is it seems pretty pretty maybe standard, but for me personally, focus has been an incredible paradigm to go after, and just understanding that when you're building something, it's really about becoming really good at what you do. And it's again, just staying focused on the core problem you're trying to solve. And again, that's from the paradigm of a problem solving platform and a software. So focus is my big statement here.
Perfect. All right, Kevin, are you ready for the best ever lightning round?
Sure thing.
Okay, what is the best ever book you've recently read?
I'd say one I've revisited is Crossing the Chasm. Again, primarily related to product building, product development, but I think it is extremely applicable to any business. So it's just about as you're getting started, it's being able to handle that initial growth, and at the same time is being able to keep yourself disciplined on what the problem is that you're trying to solve. So you can't solve everyone's problems. You're not going to build a business that solves everyone's problems. It's just really around finding, they use the landing beach analogy. So when you land on your beach, focus on that area, really, really own that area. And of course, later on, you can always expand your business. So Crossing the Chasm.
If your business were to collapse today, what would you do next?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I would definitely have to ask myself what led to the point that the business that the business collapsed. Um, so after that, I mean, it would just be a matter of reflecting on what led to that moment, what inflexibility caused the business, unless some act of God. But if business fell apart, I'd say I'd still be in real estate. I'd still be solving the problems in that space, because for us, I mean, I think it is truly the final frontier for a lot of the stuff that's happening in the world economy around real estate. So,
besides this particular need of apartment syndicators needing a technology for managing investors, what's kind of like the other biggest pain point or biggest need that can be solved by tech that you see in real estate?
I mean, we really think that the entire life cycle, the entire transaction of real estate has yet to be, call it disrupted, because just the process of acquiring real estate, all of the stakeholders involved, we are literally we've barely scratched the surface on that side. And I think that's very much so open for disruption. So the whole acquisition side is really interesting, a really interesting problem to solve.
What is the best ever way you'd like to give back?
So as you stated earlier, we're a Detroit-based company, and we've made it our internal mission. I mean, Detroit is our home, and when people think about Detroit, it's you get this sense, it's seen better days, it's grungy and whatnot, and it really is. I mean, for us, I'm a transplant to the city. I'm not a Detroiter, but I've moved here, 5 or so years ago, and I've seen the place rebuild itself. A lot of big tech companies moving in, they're seeing the opportunity. So our focus is hiring local talent, and as well as just giving back to the local community here. So that's kind of our mission locally.
And then lastly, what is the best ever place to reach you?
Best ever place, definitely can reach me directly at my email at kevin@investnext.com. Of course, you can hit me up on the website. There's a little chat bubble. You'll likely see my mugshot on there. Likely me or one of the people on the team that'll get to you. But yeah, Kevin@investnext is a perfect place.
Awesome, Kevin. Well, thanks for joining us today and walking us through the capabilities of the InvestNext platform. Very fascinating. And so we talked about, first of all, how you met the co-founder of the business and how it's kind of just random, and keeping in mind, because again, this is pretty common that I get with people who have partners, and just realizing that really any relationship that you have or any action that you take could lead randomly down the line to a deal, to a partnership. You never really know. And so, keeping all of your doors open is always a smart play. And then we talked about kind of the two main areas that are addressed by the InvestNext software: the raising money, and then the investor relations. And really, it covers everything that I can possibly think of that is involved in the raising money part of it, from when you first kind of touch someone who's interested in investing to the deal closing, and then from the investor relations standpoint, once the deal's closed until the deal is sold. It seems as if it's capable of covering all of that in one centralized location. So anyone who's interested in raising money, or has raised money, or is currently raising money, definitely check out is InvestNext. I guess I just spell it InvestNext, as in a xylophone, T.com. So definitely check that out. I will be checking it out as well after this interview. So Kevin, thanks again for joining us. Best of listeners, as always, thank you for listening. Have a best ever day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.